So I want you to think about this as you listen to this conversation, particularly if you are a searcher yourself, as somebody who's looking to get into business yourself, and maybe it includes you who hasn't thought about your succession plan, but maybe there are some young people in your business that you've already identified that may have the qualifications or character traits that Tish is going to speak about. And Tish, that's why it's so important for me to get a sense as to who is the searcher that is worthy of this opportunity. What sort of character traits do they have?
Of course, it's difficult to narrow it down to specific criteria because it's quite a difficult thing to find a person to run a business, especially one that's already been in business for a long time. And there has to be a good fit between the young entrepreneur and the business that he will be taking over and the founder of that business. Because of course he has to be secure and confident that, the young man or woman that's going to take the helm is going to protect his legacy. So in general, we would look for young professionals that may not necessarily be entrepreneurs, but would have the passion for entrepreneurship and some level of skill required to run a big business. I mean, some of the businesses that we're looking at are, most of them are over the 35 million rand revenue mark in terms of annual revenue. So the person that's going to take the helm, they must have some sort of skills and expertise that could be acquired through education, so formal education such as an MBA graduate. However, it could also be a person who doesn't necessarily have the MBA, but they have the experience, which sometimes can be more important than the formal education. And this could be, you either have a senior position within a company where you're running a certain business unit within that company, or it could be that you've, set up a business, a small business that you've run successfully, which also speaks volumes. And I think it's very important to look at the person holistically. So we've talked about education, we've talked about experience or work ethic, but also the DNA of the person, their personality traits, how they view the world. Are they somebody that's passionate about not just the industry of the business or how much money it's making, but also the future of society and the future of the country? These are very important factors for us.
So 300 million rand as a fund is available. We're looking for young entrepreneurs who are going to take advantage of the existence of this fund. And I love the fact that you say that it has to be somebody who's educated both by the book and by life. Yes. But I want to ask you, Ant, how do you find these people?
Yeah.
Because I think the criteria is quite clear to me that these are the kinds of people we're looking for. These are the capacities that we're looking for. But knowing what you're looking for and how to find those people can be a very important part of whether this becomes successful or not. And I'm also interested to hear how the founder can be a part of the process of the finding of that entrepreneur.
Yeah, spot on. So I think very relevant question, but I want to sort of give a disclaimer and say that I don't always want to find the searcher, because searchers by nature are hungry enough that they'll find you. You see, an entrepreneur...
And that might be part of the criteria, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
In fact, the purpose of us doing this very podcast is to put the content out there, communicate in a medium that our young Gen Zs and Gen Xs and millennials actually relate to, and get them to connect to us. Searchers by nature are very resourceful, incredibly resilient, and they understand how to get in touch with people like ourselves. In fact, if I was looking for a young Anthony, he would find me before I found him. So searchers by nature will go to the market and find resourceful ways to back their ideas or back their business plans. But there is a second way of us identifying searchers. So, and we've had several of them, or when we had the talk show the other night at 702, a number of people actually reached out. A young man by the name of Ryan, great business idea. He's got domain expertise in the financial services field. He's identified a potential business. Now, I'm not sure whether it would be a success or not. We'd have to assess the merits of it. But those are typically the kind of people that we're looking for, people that reach out to us.
Yeah.
And not necessarily people that we need to try and encourage to get, because entrepreneurship is either hardwired to you or not. It's either in your blood. And you can, these youngsters normally have a glint in their eye when they start talking about business. And we know that they are hunters and they are entrepreneurs. The second grouping would typically be a business owner who's worked with someone for the longest time and gone, he's got entrepreneurial spirit, and I believe that he could take this business to the next level. And the business owner would typically go, well, I've worked with Aubrey for 10 years. These are all these core competencies, technical skills. It is time for me to sort of hang up my gloves, but he's 20 years younger and he can do this better. I'd like you to get behind it. And typically the business owner then identifies a potential successor. And then there's a third grouping of where we sort of identify very key domain sort of specialist expertise in the ICT environment, really strong technical salespeople, where we'd go, this is potentially someone who could run a business and lead a business, but needs some mentoring or coaching, and then we would effectively reach out to them. And so those are the three groupings that would typically come to us. Either one, us reaching out to them and going, we see something in you, you've got an X factor, we think we can nurture this and we could make you a great leader. And we've got a couple of them, in fact, within our ecosystem that we've already identified. And we've said to them, go out and find those businesses and we'll get behind you.
I'm getting, as we continue the conversation, the idea that we're not looking for people that are looking for a job. No. We're looking for people that are entrepreneurial by nature. And I think that that's so important for our listeners to understand, because, we have a serious unemployment situation in South Africa, on the African continent, that a conversation like this can be misconstrued to mean this is a job opportunity.
Yeah.
That's not what we're looking for.
Probably can I paint a very practical example of who we're not looking for?
Yeah.
Because there are people we're looking for, there's people we're not looking for. You approach us and you say, I've got this great business that I want to invest in. I've identified the opportunity. You've got no expertise and experience in that particular domain field, i.e. financial services or property or connectivity. You come into the scenario where you have no skin in the game. You go, we want you to bankroll us, which we don't mind, but then you have an expectation for a 3 million rand salary. You've never led a company as a CEO before. And everything that's focused in the deal is really focused on your personal social security. Now, we never want a searcher coming into the environment, not having a shirt on his back. That, we would never allow that to happen, not in our part of the framework. But at the same time, there has to be a level of commitment and personal sacrifice and contribution to the success of this business that we want to build long term. And so the employee mindset is typically, pay me top salary, give me the equity at no cost. And then you as the investor, you do all the hard work to make sure that the asset works. That's not what we're looking for. There are CEOs, employee CEOs for large corporate companies where you've got a staff complement of 10,000 people and you can delegate and effectively have this very comfortable paycheck with no skin in the game, and you don't go out to do the work. That's not who we're looking for. We're looking for servant CEOs who are in the trenches doing the hard work. They're in the hunt daily. They're going out and marketing and selling and advocating the brand. Those are the people we're looking for. Who goes, I don't want to be the top earner in the company now, but I want to be the equity owner because I'm building long term. That's who we're looking for.
So ultimately, it's somebody who understands the value of the time spent in the trenches, somebody who understands the concept of owning equity Why? Because this is a project that is about entrepreneurship. I want to emphasize that to our listeners because I think it's very, very important. Precisely because the strategy is going to be looking at South Africa and the African continent at large. We've got serious unemployment issues. We've got serious legacy issues of the past. We've got serious paradigm issues around entrepreneurial or enterprising characteristics. It's very, very important, and I can't stress this enough, that this is an entrepreneurial journey, not a job seeking or job creation situation. We're looking for people that are going to be the receivers of the generational sort of transfer that we're talking about, and that requires a certain level of capacity that is fundamentally entrepreneurial. Talk to that.
Well, you recall the parable in the Bible that speaks of, a number of servants were given a particular amount of talents. And so what we are wanting to achieve in this particular scenario is that if you're the entrepreneur and I give you a 5 million rand asset, I want you to make that a 50 million rand asset. You need to win from that. We need to win from that. The employees and the customers need to win from that. And if you're not resourceful, you certainly wouldn't fit the mold. So the criteria, and I think Tishalan described that perfectly when he said, we're looking for formal education and skills. We're looking for your work-based experience. What kind of domain experience do you have? Do you understand the business that you're going to be working in? Because the simple principle of investing is don't invest in things you don't know. So if we are investing in 3 core composite businesses that we know, understand, and have operated in for a number of years. We're not trying to invest into mining because that's not where our domain expertise are. We may do this down the line, but for the moment, these are the 3 core businesses we're investing in. So skills and experience, very important. The third element, you would say that it is a very subjective assessment based on the people screening. Tishalan, myself, my exco team, my board members would ultimately look for the culture and DNA of the searcher, the entrepreneurial entrepreneur, if you will. Do they embody the traits of a successful entrepreneur? Now, those traits are not personality disposition. I just want to highlight that. Often what happens is when you're looking for an entrepreneur, you typically think, well, the guy who does the sales is the entrepreneur. I know of a number of really strong technical people. In fact, I met with one of them earlier this week, incredible guy, Donovan, and really, really strong technical guy in the IT space. He's not the typical salesman, but he embodies all of the key traits that an entrepreneur has. He's risk averse. Most successful entrepreneurs are incredibly risk averse and they won't bet the house. We're looking for those kind of guys. We're also looking for the guys that are incredibly hardworking. Tishalan mentioned the work ethic. Somebody who's prepared to put in the 14 hours a day and typically 6 to 7 days a week. He's the guy that would go, it's great I'm having a birthday dinner, but I can only get there at 7 p.m. because I'm pulling a 5 a.m. shift today. I have customers to serve. Now, I know this, you know this, that building a business requires an enormous amount of personal sacrifice and commitment. And so that third element of culture and DNA is what we would vet very, very intensely to assess, will this individual have the resilience to show up for us 5 years from now when the business is actually going through or has gone through a pothole? Yeah. Because getting into the new vehicle is one thing. Staying committed to the vehicle after you've gone into a pothole, getting it repaired, getting back on the road again. That requires a particular skill. And so we're looking for that resilience. And the reason why most entrepreneurs fail in our country is that they lack the resilience and they lack the commitment to actually go the long journey. And that's what we're looking for.
We've spoken about ASI and the searcher. I want to talk a little bit about the founder. In our previous episode, we spoke about the fact that typically we're talking about a baby boomer, talking about people who are 50 plus, perhaps somebody that hasn't really developed a proper succession plan for their business, maybe has children who are not interested in inheriting the business. Tell me about that person. What person are we talking about? Because for me, it'll really bring us full circle as to who the components of this relationship are, and give us a better picture of what it is that we want to. Who is the founder? What kind of character traits do they need to have? What mindset do they have? And what do they want?
Well, essentially, if we're talking about the person, the founder, it would largely be somebody that's a mirror of the young entrepreneur profile that we just spoke about. If you are a baby boomer, Generation X, that has managed to build a business in a complex market like financial services, property, or connectivity, and brought that business to a 35 million rand revenue per year, you are somebody that's definitely going to have resilience, grit, somebody who's risk averse, somebody who knows how to take something from nothing and make it a giant in the industry. So essentially, we are looking for the older version of the young entrepreneur.
You were going to say the older version of this. I saw that show.
I'll let myself into trouble here. But essentially, we're looking for the person who is going to pass that baton over to the younger generation. Obviously, there'll be some gaps now that that person is exiting the market and retiring. There'll be some gaps that he may not be able to bridge at his age, that the young entrepreneur could now come in and fix and scale that business even further. But essentially, the DNA is likely to be very similar. Because that's where the rubber hits the road.
Can I maybe add to that, please, Tisha? Or if I can, please. There are probably three key elements that we would look out for. Someone that is in the sort of latter phase of life. And so you're looking at a found. In fact, you're looking for me 20 years from now. And I know I still look 30. Right. You're looking for the 55-year-old who has been in the game of entrepreneurship and business building for the last 15 to 20 years, if not longer. And he's gone, I've done the hard yards. I've built a company. I employ a few dozen people or a few hundred people, and it's time for me to hand over. But my son, who decided to heed to the Trump calling and go to the US, is not interested in building in South Africa. So that is my Friday humor. Who said, he's decided that he doesn't want to be in property management. He's an architect and he'd rather be working abroad. We're looking for that entrepreneur, that founder or a business owner. Doesn't always have to be a founder. It could be someone that bought a business and helped scale it.
Yeah.
But that business owner where we go to him and he says, it's time for me to hand over, but I've still got 10 years more, man. I'm 55 and I've got 10 years more. And we go, we would love to journey with you in that 10-year period where you get to build a legacy transfer of your skills, your IP, your experience, your knowledge, but most importantly, your passion for this business to this youngster who is yet to earn the school fees or the school lessons, if you will, and pay the school fees that you have paid over 25 to 30 years. And let's spare him that so that he's a greater success than you. And the number of business owners and founders that I come across that have said, Anthony, we absolutely love this because, they say that, 40 is the old age of youth. 50 is the youth of old age. And so in the latter phase of life and business, they're going, how do I pass on legacy? And you would understand this, Aubrey, when you speak to a founder, when he speaks about his business, the love, the intensity, the passion that he speaks about his business is as if he was describing his own child. That's what we're looking for. And so the idea is to get him to connect to this young entrepreneur and ensure that this kit that he's created over 25 years should not die and go into the ether overnight. Let's get someone else to support the growth and sustainability of the business. And business owners and founders typically have a love for their customers, their people, and what they've built. They don't want it to fail, and they're highly competitive in nature. And so we're looking for those key traits to go, and that's sort of the ideal, what I've described to you is the ideal owner going, I'm 55, I've got 10 years in me.
Yeah.
Help me build a legacy plan that I can be proud of, that my people and my customers can be proud of. And ultimately, when I'm sitting on my balcony or my porch and on a Sunday afternoon and sipping a whiskey or coffee, I think back and I go, wow, I've done good. And it's something that I can be proud of. That's who we're looking for.
Before we take a break, I want to ask this final question about the owner, about the entrepreneur who wants to hand over, and their understanding of the value of that which they've grown over time, which is a critical part of whether or not the ETA fund works or not, right? And part of what we spoke about in the past is that the win-win here is that there is real value that the owner of the business gets right up front. I want you to talk to us about that, but how do we develop or determine the value of the business in a way that is going to make the owner understand that the ETA process is the way to go?
Aubrey, this is such a deep question because you could be a fly on the wall listening to every conversation that every founder or business owner has had with us. There's always this debate about what is the company worth on paper in commercial value. There is
He has got like skin. He loves this thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Every business has a net asset value or a PE ratio, if you will, or a free cash flow in the business. And there are various ways of valuing the company. Let's talk, and I believe that in every business, there's the current value, the asset value that you're buying. And this would typically go to a commercial valuator and he'll value the asset. Then there is the founder's deemed value on the company. And then there's the inherent value through growth. And our ETA fund is the only funding model that considers all three. So it's what, I think I said this in the previous podcast where I said, what the business owner or founder gets from us as a search fund and an investor is the trifecta. You have us as the investor. You have us as the coach, the mentor, and the operator in your business. And you also have us as an advisor, because the searcher's success is our success. Your success is our success. So we are Siamese equity partners.
I love that word, Siamese equity partner. Yeah.
If you fail, we fail, because we share the same pair of legs, man.
Yeah.
We might be sharing a number of other things, but we don't want our partners to fail, not the searcher, not the founder. But I want to close off on this point to say that the founder's value and what he deems to be valuable is often not something that can be quantified. I had a meeting with a broker and he said, but Ant, you got to understand, my first customer, I had to walk. I didn't have a car. I walked 6 kilometers to get to this client. I signed him up. My second client, I walked 23 kilometers on that day. And I go, I empathize. I relate to you. But your business is only valued at that. What we will attempt to do in the transition is to get you to realize the first 10 years of your sweat capital before you can buy the nice building and hire all the nice people you have. We understand that there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. But over the next 10 years, let's get you to realize some of that value. So as a typical scenario in one of our deals, what we had put together was business had run for 27 years. We said to the young searcher, here's 24% equity stake to the existing business owner. You retain 25% as the majority equity partner and funding this transaction. We will come on as a 51% partner. And over the next 10 years, let's all of us win together. And it's about finding those 3 wins. And what I find in most of the private equity transactions, a lot of the VC transactions, the win is very much about the fund or about one party winning. And it's a psychology that we need to work on with the business owner to go, it's not just about you. We get this as your business that you built, but you ain't going to take this to your grave, but you can leave a very, very strong legacy, and you can realize this value over the next 10 years or the next 5 to 6 years. And that's what we work towards. It's always about finding those 3 wins, and we've been very successful to date in that.